All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and start us off with some prelude music. Please come up and drop a stone in the bowl during the prelude for anything that is on your heart and or mind.
Before we begin our service, please also take a moment to set your intentions for the day and week ahead, because the stones can also represent our intentions as well as joys and sorrows that go unsaid. Michael, that was beautiful. Welcome to the gathering at Northern Hills. My name is Sarah, and I've been here since, I think, 2023. I'm so glad to see everybody with us today, and if we have any visitors, we don't. But if we had, they would be welcome to introduce themselves, and we'd love to get to know them. I'd like to also say good morning and welcome to our friends on Zoom. Who else is joining us, Alan?
We have Culla, Les, Marty, Mel, Noreen in general, Paul, Ruth, Suzanne, and we still think user is Dottie.
Hi, everybody. Glad to have you. So, GNH is a Unitarian Universalist community, a spiritual tradition unbound by creed or an enforced common identity. We embrace each other and our world, honoring the interconnection of all living things. We practice gratitude and generosity, seek justice and equity, and above all, support one another as we journey through this world and its challenges. Whether member or guest, you are loved and welcomed in this sacred space. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to affirm and promote, among other things, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which allows all of us to enjoy unique and deeply personal spiritual journeys like the one we will be hearing about today. But before we get to that, of course, we have some announcements. Today is Hygiene Kits Day. I hope you will all stay and help us with the hygiene kits. Tom Lotman and Alan Jerome have taken over the Lighthouse Shelter for Youth meals. But if you would like to help with that, of course, please get in contact with them. This Tuesday, February 17th, the Mill Creek Democracy Network is having a meeting with the League of Women Voters and Mary Kate Guinness. On March 1st, we are having a joint service with UUSC. The Reverend Laura Randall will be presenting, and the topic is, "The scale of the world's problems is overwhelming. How do we tend to hope in these brutal times?" UUSC's grassroots partners are working around the world and in the United States to create the change they want to see in the world, one person, one project, one act of courage at a time. Reverend Laura Randall from UUSC will share stories of hope and the possibility happening right now through the power of community solidarity. As the Director for Congregational Relations at UUSC, the Reverend Laura Randall, her pronouns are she, her, hers, facilitates partnerships to strengthen the impact of the UU Service Committee and the social justice reach of UU communities. And before that, on February 28th, Heritage has invited us to a Caribbean-focused dinner with activists Pablo de Jesus, and they're members of UUSC as well. See Tom if you're interested in that. It does sound delicious. We begin our service with the lighting of our sacred chalice. The flame representing the light of truth is a beacon to guide us on our journeys, and the chalice a symbol of the spiritual sustenance provided by our beautiful community. Tom, would you please light the chalice?
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
For our opening words today, I will be telling a story which is an excerpt from the ancient Mesopotamian Epic of Gilgamesh. You know the city Shuruppak? It stands on the banks of the Euphrates. That city grew old, and the gods that were in it were old. There was Anu, lord of the firmament, their father, and warrior Enlil, their counselor, Ninurta the helper, and Inugi, watcher over canals, and with them also was Ea. In those days the world teemed, the people multiplied, the world bellowed like a wild bull, and the great God was aroused by the clamor. Enlil heard the clamor, and he said to the gods in council, "The uproar of mankind is intolerable, and sleep is no longer possible by reason of the babel." So the gods agreed to exterminate mankind. Enlil did this, but Ea, because of his oath, warned me in a dream. He whispered their words to my house of reeds. Reed house, wall, O wall. Hearken, reed house, and build a boat. Abandon possessions and look for life. Despise worldly goods and save your soul alive. Tear down your house, I say, and build a boat. These are the measurements of the bark as you shall build her. Let hex beam equal her length. Let her deck be roofed like the vault that covers the abyss. Then take up into the boat the seed of all living creatures. An oddly familiar story, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
We come now to our opening hymn, number 343, A Fire, Mist, and a Planet. Please stand and join in singing as you are willing and able.
A fire, mist, and planet, a crystal and a cell, a starfish and a saurian, and caves where ancients dwelled. The sense of law and beauty, a face turned from the sod. Some call it evolution, some others call it God. Haze on the far horizon, the infinite tender sky, the right triptychs of cornfields, the wild geese sailing high, and over high and lowland, the charm of goldenrod. Some people call it autumn, some others call it God. Like tides on crescent sea beach, when the moon's so new and thin, into our heights our yearnings come welling, surging in. Come from the mystic ocean, whose rim no foot has trod. Some people call it longing, some others call some others call it God.
That was beautiful. I love to hear our voices lifted up together. As we are standing, let us now join in our unison affirmation. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. Thank you, everyone. Our message today is from our own dear usher, Andrew Ketterer. Andrew is sharing with us his own spiritual journey titled 1,000 Versions of Me in 1,000 People's Minds.
I am pretty sure most of you were here for my incredibly dark spiritual journey message. I hope this speaks to how perspective changes the narrative and gives a totally different impression, even given a contradictory one. Yes, even thinking that we are consistent with our beliefs is false. We carry opposing views that contradict. Here is a narrative from a new way to look at my life. Do you know why we are not consistent? That is because some things benefit ourselves to contradict. Truth is fickle. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which that's what she read, parts of it, was created by the Babylonians and was the first known flood story. Many other civilizations would develop flood stories. Some will say this is proof of a global event, but really it speaks to the human condition and the fact floods are part of the human condition. In pagan culture, myths were interchangeable and treated like all that was different were names, such as the case with Greek and Roman gods. Many view myths as antiquated, but the truth is we are still creating them, because it is in the very nature of human beings. It is essentially that we understand our past in order to understand our current state and helps us understand when we go from here. For instance, when I was a child, I was disturbed by the flood story in Christianity. My dad quickly dismissed it as just a story. It is a story believed as true by many fundamentalists. As children, our parents are our gods, which could explain why early religion at first is very anthropomorphic. Now, I could never imagine a human-like creature doling up not punishments. For me, it's hard to think of mine in that role now. They have become creatures more human as I see their choices. Choices that I could easily make myself. When I was little, my parents were Sunday school teachers who cared very little for the over-religious, who seemed to resemble cartoon characters like Flanders from The Simpsons. I think my parents, and especially my mom, see these people as disingenuous and lacking a rational mindset. Growing up Catholic was an odd experience because I see the Roman Catholic religion in the U.S. is as slightly fundamentalist. Most American Catholics believe the church didn't and doesn't believe in evolution, but they had a soft belief in evolution initially, but eventually they would accept evolution, with even the most recent pope stating God is not a magician. Even the general public didn't have as much trouble believing in evolution at this point in time. During my early childhood and early teens, we went to St. Bart's, just down the road from here, until we moved to Harrison. My parents really liked St. Bart's because of their music, and the local church in Harrison did not live up to that standard that St. Bart's established. Consequently, my very kid's dream that there was no more church, no more sermons, no more Sunday school, and I could sleep in as late as I wanted. My first real job was at a Wendy's restaurant. We had a saying whenever we did something wrong or we were about to, we would ask, what would Dave do? It referred to founder Dave Thomas, but it was really our way of mocking organized religion. My fellow employees were mostly college kids with social and political ideas more advanced than mine. At this time, I didn't really know what it meant to be a conservative or a liberal. I had a Fox News addiction after 9/11, and the History Channel backed up the Bush administration, but that didn't last long. After there was no weapons of mass destruction discovered in Iraq, I quickly lost faith in Fox News and W and the History Channel. It was all about spectacle, not information, and from that point forward, I was skeptical of everything I heard from them. I think they need to ask themselves, what would Dave do? I started identifying as an agnostic during junior year of high school with a nudge from one of my friends. When the topic of religion came up in conversation, I found that people can't imagine a world without it being in their corner, where the creature makes you win football games or snow days. I know I prayed for snow days a lot. Most people would say, well, no one truly knows to downplay our difference in beliefs. But if you truly talk to these people, they're usually certain in their beliefs and don't seem to question much about what they've been taught. It was music that opened up my mind and radicalized my views. The only reason I got into music is because I needed something to listen to as I drove to places. The college kids I worked with at Wendy's introduced me to indie music. Mostly independent artists are on small labels rather than major labels like Atlantic, Sony, Columbia, Epic. There's a greater emphasis on creative freedom from small indie labels, which is loved by some and hated by others. They can perceive the creative freedom as liberating or just plain weird. I remember hanging out with my friends from Wendy's, listening to a song from the Cursive, The Ugly Organ. The cello attracted my friends and I to the band. The album really opened my eyes towards indie, especially their next album, Happy Hollow. Happy Hollow is mostly about singer-songwriter Tim Kosher's religious beliefs and atheistic views. At this point where I was living, people were especially hostile to atheism. This was the first time I heard anyone speak so freely and shamelessly as they declare their lack of belief. I still remember them saying how all the members of the band are atheists except for the drummer. This is an example of how indie offered greater creative freedom than what major labels were offering because it did not have mass appeal. This was during a period of time when the nuns, meaning people with no religion, were still pretty few and far between where I was. Indie must help establish a sense of community for me and others like me. For a while, I worked for Biggs in the frozen food and dairy department. When Biggs was sold and they planned to close it, the people in Harrison fought so hard to keep it open. It worked, but quickly became second to Kroger's, and it left Biggs remodeling and unused. Despite the fact I don't do well in the cold, I was made for the department. Every Sunday, I was brought in to process the yogurt department. There was a kid named Jason, whom I worked with. We talked evolution, the Big Bang Theory, not the TV show, and okay. Let's see, the view that the Earth revolved around the sun. We discussed how perspective could fail us, like our perspective that made us think the sun revolved around us. We interject our personal experiences such as we are born and die, and so when we see the world in that rationale and lens, I point out that it could be a godless world that just always existed. He walked away devastated. Freshman year of college changed everything for me, and this was ultimately true of my entire college experience. I was slowly learning from other world perspectives. I became a salad bar philosopher. I looked at postmodernism and realized they had aspects with truth but were limited. We need to question beliefs and that tend to go unquestioned, but we are betrayed by cognitive dissonance. Postmodernism addressed the dangers of building narratives and how we convince ourselves that things are true simply to fulfill our own self-needs, interests. The best example of postmodern philosophy in the literature, the book Life of Pi by Jan Mattel. If you're unfamiliar with the basic plot, the main character's father owned a zoo, and during his relocation in his zoo, the boat sank, and the protagonist had to survive as a lone human on a small rescue boat with a tiger as a companion. Pi, the main character, embraced Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam, and work questions the reality of all faiths. The ultimate message of the book is we should question all things regardless of what comfort they give us. In recent years, the framework of postmodernist thought is unfortunately being used to dismiss well-supported beliefs for political reasons, mostly by mega supporters. It's kind of like, what is it? Well, like alternate facts. One belief from postmodernism thought reminds us the dangers of narratives and supporting falsehoods. Over time, I found there was benefit in secular humanism in ways similar to my own beliefs. Truly caring about humanity and the conviction that good exists beyond organized religion and established deities, I found that many people believe that there can be no good without God. During Prohibition, for instance, it's ringing. Let's see. During Prohibition, for instance, there was a secular group named the Society of Reformed Drunkards that was formed to help people move on from the evils of alcohol. There was a belief that people could not get over the vice of alcohol without the help of God. It was blasphemous. I also love existentialism, which gained prominence in the years after World War II and pushed us as a society to take responsibility for our collective actions like the Holocaust and the lies we told ourselves to justify our indifference and inaction toward protecting those persecuted by the Nazis. The people in towns near the camps could smell the camps. Franklin Roosevelt thought if the soldiers found out they were trying to save the Jews, then they wouldn't fight as hard. And some detractors called him FDR Rosenstein because they thought he was a secret Jew, and he selected Jewish people for his cabinet members. Teddy Roosevelt, one of the most popular presidents, was related to Franklin, of course, and was obviously not Jewish, yet somehow people claimed FDR was secretly Jewish. This points out the irrational state of many anti-Semitism. There was many examples contradictory and irrational views held by the anti-Semites, such as Jews are communists, which was believed by capitalists, and communists believed they were capitalists. There are endless examples of contradictions which makes them almost impossible to reason with. Ultimately, the newspapers had accounts of the Holocaust. There are even accounts of the papers that said 2 million Jews had been killed, which was dismissed as unlikely that many. It's actually, I think it was something like 6 million. But was actually much more than that. We are, as a society, knew it was happening. Existentialist philosophy helped create a sense of responsibility for our actions and inactions. Nowadays, I'm more of an egoist philosopher. I believe you can't escape self-interest. In pure egoism, as we follow logic and reasoning, and we set boundaries about who we should help. To me, secular humanists get the least from their actions. There is no cosmic reward waiting in some kind of afterlife. They simply want a better world to live in, and that is an amazing thing. Buddhism, another huge influence of me, feels like something different. It aligns with my goal of ending suffering and taking nothing for it. I think at this point, I find myself closest to Buddhism. We don't actually know if the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was an actual person. Was he tempted by Mara, the devil of Buddhism? Did he sit under the Bodhi tree? Did he start out as wealthy and give it all up to end our suffering? I don't think it matters, honestly. If something improves society in your life, then the truth of the physical reality, isn't truly relevant. If we look at Buddhism and egoism critically, we see two opposing views, but they are two sides of the same coin. Buddhism aims to end suffering, and egoism being the view of self-interest, with many seeing it as a selfish. As social creatures, our self-interest is intertwined with the self-interest of others. We need others because what we can accomplish alone is meager compared to what we are able to accomplish as a group. We look at the accomplishment of the cell phone and the complexity of each research project that goes into making the original smartphone. Each researcher done by experts in their fields. As an individual, we are very limited, but as a group, we become a cog in a wheel where what we accomplish together is greater than the sum of our parts. Yet, we are still acting in our own self-interest. Despite the personal gain getting blurred, suffering prevents us from maximizing our own and collective gain. For two beliefs that seem to be opposing, they seem to feed off one another. Considering both views, it gives new insight into living for others. If we look at the world through a purely egoist perspective, we view the world as fallen in line, and the causes for every action seems oblivious. And this is the flaw of viewing the world through only one lens. Looking at the world through many perspectives is in essence wise mind. Our ability to make on different worldviews prevents us from missing obvious insight that our personal view limits us. Ultimately, many perspectives, religious and secular, were created to respond to a moment in history. It's kind of interesting how Jesus came to fruition the moment we expected, though modern Jewish belief dictates that he was not Messiah for them. The first Christian converts beyond the original Jews were the Greeks. The Greeks adapted Christianity to meet their sensibilities. Pagan cultures frequently absorb and adapt foreign religion beliefs into their own. There are some notable similarities between the modern character of Jesus Christ and that of Dionysus. Both were the sons of God. Both used wine as a symbol of their holiness. Both had power over creation. There are many more, but this is how Christianity spread throughout Greece. In the accounts of Jesus in the Bible lacks important consistency and varies quite a bit. When we look at holy sites, no matter the religion, those sites remain holy. Judaism never stopped looking for a savior, and there was an instance that came close. In the 17th century, and I will totally destroy his name, Sabati Zedi, we even wrote down.
I wrote it phonetically for you.
I know, it's hard still. Okay, a Jewish mystic in the Ottoman Empire claimed to be long-awaited Messiah and founded the Sabbatian movement. Central to his belief system was the idea that the Messianic era, sinful acts would become righteous. This thinking has some obvious negative social connotations, as he was ultimately imprisoned and given the choice of execution or Islamic conversion. His followers were expecting the martyrdom, but were devastated by his choice to convert. This inevitably spared the man's life and killed the movement. Have you ever read about a mental illness to a psychology book and seen yourself in each one? This happens because the defining factor of psychological disability is an intensity or severity of a common human experience, kind of like religion. Religious teachings have so much in common because ultimately everyone is dealing with the same problems within the shared human experience. From our earliest superstitions to post-war existentialism, accountability, to the postmodernist struggle for relevancy, all we have been trying to do is survive and thrive. I see myself in all these views because all religions and philosophies speak to the human condition. Whether I question that they are historically accurate or having no truth whatsoever, we are similar enough to come close to the same situation. We can find many ways that connect ourselves to our relatives, to our neighbors, to all other humans past and present, and as long as we are connected to one another, we will share. As long as we are connected, we will try to make sense of our world together through logos and mythos. And that's it for that.
Thank you, Andrew. Now for our talk back, we're going to try something a little bit different. I invite you each to reflect on your own spiritual journeys and consider these questions. What myths do you carry, and what radicalized you? I'll share a story to start off and give you all a moment to think about it, because I don't know that I actually got radicalized. If I did, it happened so long ago that I don't remember it. I was raised Catholic, but I had rejected all of Judeo-Christian mythology by about 5 years old. You can't fit that many animals in a boat. However, I did get blamed for radicalizing my little brother Karsten. I think I was 18 and he was 10. We were having a rare conversation that wasn't him yammering about cartoons, and somehow I ended up telling him what it meant to be agnostic. I think I worded it as, when you don't think anybody can be sure if there is a God or not. And my brother, who was 10, said, "Yeah, that sounds about right." And he henceforth refused to attend his catechism classes or participate in confirmation because he had determined that he was not Catholic. And I'm pretty sure my mom is still mad at me. But she also got mad at me when I discussed Bible stories that she couldn't remember with my littlest brother, so there's no winning with her. So, anybody want to share?
So as many of you know, Rebecca and I are both pagan. Prior to shifting towards paganism in my own case, I was agnostic or otherwise didn't really care. But after meeting Rebecca and having more of a framework for how such pagan religions can be viewed and function, during COVID, when I was trapped in my parents' attic, which is like a finished attic, it's basically a guest room, on my own doing online classes for college with minimal other human contact. In the middle of the night, I would just be bored. I would be in my shower at like midnight, taking my shower, and I was remembering a familiarity that I've felt with the nighttime my entire life. And so in my mind, the closest framework for the existence of the nighttime is the Greek goddess Nyx, a primordial existence that has existed since before the other Greek gods. And so I just reached out. I said, "Hi, how are you? How was your day? Were you asleep?" That's what the myths say. And I kept doing that. Once a week, sometimes every day for the entire week, I would just, usually in my shower, because that was the time I wasn't thinking about anything else, just reach out and talk to her. And that has continued. It is now more often once a week to once a month, as my life has gotten more complicated, but that's been where it is. The night is not purely this embodiment that is Nyx, but she represents in the metaphysical what is represented in the physical by the shifting of the sun around the earth, or the earth around the sun, as science says, and I believe. But there's the physical and there's the metaphysical in my mind. And because I'm familiar and comfortable with the nighttime, why not make friends with the night?
I really like that.
Yeah, first, Sarah, I have a reaction to your radicalization because I share it. And it seemed to me when I was really young that if there was a wise, all-intelligent God, there would have been no mosquitoes on the ark. And Andrew, I really appreciated your presentation. Over the years, I've given a lot of thought to what sets UUism apart. And you guys have heard me talk about, I think, religion, spirituality should provide answers, or at least some insights into four basic human needs of belonging, becoming, believing, and beloving. And when I look at UUism versus traditional religions focus exclusively on belonging and believing. And I think while UUs accept those as basic needs, we add becoming and beloving. And while traditional religious books, whether it's the Quran, whether it's the Bible, whatever, talks about loving, the reality historically is what Richard Dawkins said, that traditional religions go to war and kill each other's children over whose imaginary friend is better. And I think that what we as you use look at believing is we believe in the journey, we believe in the struggle, not in the inevitable outcome that is fixed. And so when your title and your talk about 1,000 views of yourself, that's the epitome of becoming. And all of our, I should say most of us, started out differently from a religious and spiritual perspective, and we really experienced what you've described in your personal journey, and I appreciate that. And just one final thing is, I really liked your talking about, and you're bringing up the point of, do I do this by myself or do I do this with others? And that's a question that I've had, is like, okay, why isn't my spiritual path something in my solitude? Why am I here with other people thinking about this? And it reminds me of the African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And your talk today and the breadth of your thinking helps me go further, so thanks.
Two things, one of them being that when you were talking about that kind of that aspect where like being a cog in the wheel and a lot of things being, putting it together, it reminded me of us doing the hygiene kits today. I might put the Q-tips in, but at the end, we have the whole packet together by each of us doing what we do. And then there'll be the people that will distribute it. So that part. But I also was thinking about, we're really always a becoming our whole lives. And wherever you are now is not where you'll be in 2 years or 4 years or 8 years if you're growing. And so that's why I love Blue Boat Home, the words, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
I'm thinking about the question, what radicalized you? And I think what radicalized me, and this definitely happened multiple times in different stages, is really education radicalized me. I was raised Catholic and went to a Catholic school, and I'll never forget the moment in my senior year theology course. My theology teacher was trying to teach us something, and I very silently went to the back of the room, picked out a catechism, and flipped to the page that contradicted what he was trying to teach us in this morality class, and basically proved him wrong. And just learning, I was very interested in learning about Catholicism and organized religion because I felt a very close connection to the divine. And so that was my channel for understanding that. And so my radicalization definitely started there. With just independent study and learning about the Gospels of Mary Magdalene and how the Bible was decided and all of those things. But then going to college and learning different viewpoints and just hearing about different perspectives and different options. And the world has not always been this way and does not have to continue to always be this way. And education, I feel that in learning about all of the hard and scary things, you find a lot of hope. And so being someone who works in education and is deeply concerned about policy in education that's happening right now in the United States, I feel like the robbing of truth is also the robbing of hope.
All I can remember is very pregnant pause in a class. I'll get to it in just a second. I'll forget. I went to school with Suzanne's brother, and we were in a class, English class of all things, and everybody's going along fine. All of a sudden, he raises his hand and says, "Professor, what if you don't believe in God?" It got real quiet. I'm not sure what happened after that. I guess I was too shocked. But that's like, whoops. Very Catholic town, you know, Cincinnati.
I did Catholic grade school, high school, and college. And in my senior year, that was the moment, this is the moment that crystallized the radicalization that I would have been feeling through most of my Catholic college. I guess except I wasn't bright enough to question much at grade school and high school, but by college I was. Anyway, just to quick the story, I had a logic class that was on the second floor, and then I had theology on the first floor the next hour. Well, that's putting you in the middle of a potential radicalization right there. Anyway, I was full of, but what if, you know, in my theology class. And finally, the Dominican priest in his white robes and whatever said, "Miss Graham, are you aware that in order to graduate, you must pass this class?" And I said, yeah. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do you a favor and help you graduate by the fact that I'm not going to call on you ever again in this entire class. And if I don't call on you, I assure you, you should not raise your hand because that will do no good, and I will not call on you. And therefore, if you follow that rule, you will graduate." And I did graduate, and I was never a Catholic again after that.
Great story.
I'll also try to answer what radicalized you. My drift from Catholicism was very, very gradual over the years. We grew up in Texas, and my parents were from the Midwest. They were Catholics from St. Louis. So, we all felt better, smarter, more awakened than all the Baptists in Texas. But of course, then we eventually moved to Cincinnati, where Texas there's a Baptist church on every corner, and Cincinnati there's a Catholic church on every corner. And it really surprises me that as recently as 1998, when we moved into the city and were looking at school options for our kids, that I actually considered sending them to a Catholic school. It surprises me now a lot that I still had that much accommodation of Catholicism in me at that point. I'm trying to speak on religion a little bit, but when I receive the question, what radicalized me to be a liberal, a progressive, a secular humanist was watching the Alabama and Mississippi racial violence on the TV news, which happened when I was about 12. That, more than anything, set me on the path away from conservatism.
I will say, I went to Catholic elementary school for several years, and when my little brother was born, I was an adult, and I tried to convince my mom to send him to Catholic school, and she was like, "What? You hated Catholic school?" And I said, "Yes, but they'll teach him cursive."
I also came from a Catholic background. I was in my early 20s when I made the decision to leave. I was a very fervent little Catholic girl. I loved being Catholic when I was young, and then just it sort of became inconvenient. And then I started doing a lot more research on Christianity, history, whatnot, and I pretty much walked away. Just, it was pretty clean. Strangely enough, in my late 20s, just before I turned 30, I went down and I worked at a Catholic medical mission, not because it was Catholic, but because they would take short-term assignments. I went for several weeks, and I was never pressured to go to Mass or to participate in any, it wasn't a Catholic thing. And I lived with 3 nuns who were just so humble, so kind. This was a very poor little town. I just can't say enough about them. And there was a priest who also lived in the same, in the building next door. And he radicalized me against ever considering again anything to do with the Catholic Church. He was the most obnoxious, arrogant, condescending to the culture. It just was so offensive. And it was such a contrast between the nuns who had been there for years and just, he would not, baptism's important in Catholicism. He would not baptize babies whose parents weren't married. And I thought, wow, But anyway, that was the final straw for me.
I feel like I'm in a minority because I'm one of the very few not raised Catholic here. Well, I was raised in the United Church of Christ, which was more on the liberal end of the Protestant. And I do remember going through confirmation classes, and one of the things they asked is whether you believed in God, and if you did, why? And my question was, well, you have to believe in something because something made everything that exists. So I didn't necessarily call it God, I just said there's something out there. When I went to college, and this goes to what Rebecca says, I took Bible classes. I did go to a Presbyterian college, and Bible classes were required, and that's when I began to really think more about my religion, because I learned about the books of the Bible were written over a long period of time by many different people with lots of views, and so that really made me think about traditional religious views. So that really woke me up. The other thing is, when I was growing up, I did have friends who were Catholic, and the stories they told me made me not want to be a Catholic. My grandfather was raised Catholic. He married my grandmother, who was not Catholic, and the church they very much frowned on that. So he left the Catholic Church, and that was also an influence on me.
48 years ago, and I know exactly how long ago it was, I guess I was radicalized. I was in a lunchroom. I was working at Kroger at the time, and I was a manager, and one of the clerks was there at the table having his lunch, and we got into a religious discussion. And I was very logical in those days. Now I'm illogical, but I was very logical, and we got into a discussion. And it went on for a while, and he was a born-again Christian. And he had a position that he absolutely believed in, and I was having the time of my life. This was a great conversation until I won what turned out to be an argument. His face changed. It dropped. I won. Then I realized at that moment I had just taken something away from him that was extremely important. I have not had a religious conversation since.
I knew it. I knew it. You were going to do it.
Well, mentioning UCC, I was raised UCC, which I just found out after the closing of my hometown church in Risington, Indiana, about a year and a half ago, that the German immigrants in 1869 were Lutheran. So they wanted to start a Lutheran church in my little hometown. But the Lutheran Synod, wherever that was located, said, nah. Okay, sounds right. So they went with the Evangelical Reformed German Church. So that's what started it there in my hometown. But to me, your religion, your faith, whatever, it just comes down to knowing that there is a higher power, whatever you want to call it, that created this whole being. So call it what you want. Just know that we're all products of that higher power.
Got to pay extra for.
I'll be really quick. There's something Vicki said and Alan said that just reminded me of something. I was in Canada, and the bishop in a diocese in Ontario who was progressive decided he was concerned about a number of cloistered nuns communities, and he wanted psychological testing and evaluation of the cloistered nuns, and we had the contract to do that. And I confess, I went into that anticipating a lot of pathology, a lot of repressed sexuality, and what I discovered is probably the healthiest psychological people I've ever met. And it reminded me of Alan. It taught me to really appreciate the good and the possibility of everybody's spiritual path.
Anybody on Zoom?
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, this is Suzanne. I hate to take more time because I know you're all dying to get out there and do the hygiene kits, but speaking to the question of the radicalization, I grew up in a conservative town, Sydney, 40 miles north of Dayton. And I lived there until I went away to college in Boston. And growing up, we were members of the Methodist Church, and we went to the Methodist Church at least 3 times a week. We went for Sunday school, we went for church, we went for choir practice, we went for youth group, and I think there was something else, but I can't really remember what it is right now. When I went to college, my sole aim was to shed that. The social views were welcome to me, but the theological views were not right, and the idea of being so closed into the church was not right. So I went to college. I went to Tufts University. I fully intended to major in philosophy because I wanted to find how to think. I shortly found out that I felt that there was nothing there in philosophy. And I switched over to religion. And in my freshman year, as a matter of fact, I took a course in philosophy of religion. At that time, Tufts had a theological school for the Unitarian Universalists. And so I was in with a group of people who were studying for the ministry in Unitarianism. And that's what radicalized me. I was exposed to Unitarian thought, but I was also exposed to world religions. I was exposed to all of the other mainstream and sect religions in the United States. But thinking about the word radicalization, I call it that because in addition to opening up the world for me in terms of thought, it took me back to the roots, which is what radical means. And it took me back to my roots with Methodism. And I found the good in that. And I still look to that to this day. And that to me reflects the journey of searching and researching that we heard about this morning that Andrew explained to us. And I see this point
looking at things with multiple points of view. And I would also like to thank you all for the hymn, the first hymn, which I didn't know and which I thought was perfect for today.
Yeah, I chose that one.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you all for sharing in this discussion. Now, this community and this space is precious to us. So to keep the lights on and keep us able to work towards our shared goals, the time has come to ask you to contribute what you can. If you are a guest or visitor, please do not feel obligated. Your presence is already a wonderful gift.
Hoping that my mind don't slip, sailing on a sinking ship into the sunset in a day. Dark night on a long highway, little lights in the houses say, is somebody staying up late? Oh, I'll be true to you, yeah, you know I will. I'll be true to you forever until I go home. God, it's great to be alive. Takes the skin right off my hide to think I'll have to give it all up someday. And if I ever treated you mean, you know that it was only because I'm sorry I couldn't have you for my own. Oh, I'll be true to you, yeah, you know I will. I'll be true to you forever or until I go home. I go home. I go
Thank you, Michael. So thank you for sharing your resources to maintain our community. Now I hope that you'll also feel free to share any joys or sorrows you're experiencing. Joy is increased by spreading it to others, and burdens are easier to bear when they're shared.
Yeah, I have a joy that it kind of caught me by surprise about how much joy, and that is that for Alyssa's first birthday, Anne baked her a three-dimensional upright teddy bear cake. And then yesterday, for her 50th birthday, Anne recreated that three-dimensional teddy bear cake, and it just brought all of us a great deal of joy. So it was well, yeah, it was joyous.
Did you take a picture of it? I'll bring it in. I'd like to see it. I don't know what that means. I've never seen a horizontal cake.
Well, I have a great joy that ends with just a tiny tad of sadness. And the joy is that when you go in the Quimby room, on the table where we always serve our goodies,
you will find a lovely presentation of candy and cookies and goodies with a note from the Word of Hope Temple leaving us all those goodies. And also down in the nursery, they set up all kinds of lovely things for what they thought would be the kids in our congregation. They had donuts, they have bags, individual bags full of goodies. They have little tic-tac-toe heart games that they've made. It is so sweet, so please go down and check that out. The sadness, the tiny bit of sadness is that we don't have children to appreciate this.
Zeus Spate. Come on, Micah, you got to have 10. Okay, 9.
First of all, Jenny's okay. We just had a logistics problem this morning with me coming early to set up for the hygiene kits. But we do have some sadness. Her oldest, or her only sister at this point, passed away this week, and her funeral was Tuesday. And then this afternoon, we are going to a funeral of another friend who was the father of our daughter's best friend, that Jenny practically raised her. And then tomorrow is another funeral. So we've lost 3 people. They're all older folks, but it's been a tough week all the way around.
I have a sorrow also. I'm afraid we'll be going to a funeral before very long. Our people that when we first moved to Cincinnati, we shared a 2-family with, and they moved back to Kentucky, and we don't see them or even talk all that often, but they're very dear friends. And I was acknowledging a Christmas card they had sent us, and their card said something about sorrow, kind of had a little message to all our friends that get the card. We've had a year of joy and sorrow, and she didn't say what. So in my email, I just mentioned it, and I said, I guess we'll find out when we see you or something. But then she emailed back, and her husband, over the last 18 months, has had so many health problems that I didn't know about, an autoimmune disease, a bowel thing from a colonoscopy, a heart thing, and now he's been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So I felt like, gee, couldn't you just get lung cancer and die and not have to have all these problems before that? But the thing that struck me, and she just said at the end of her email, just that something to the effect that it's very hard to look to the future right now. So that sticks with me.
Suzanne and I had a joy. We got to see our grandson in Denison. They had the North Coast meet. And another thing, I sort of go with it, we got to see places we'd never seen before, amazing towns where these little Division III universities are. I didn't know the Worcester had a tartan. And they got this madman that comes and waves a flag when they swim, And it's ones like that. But the interesting thing about that is, I got to think about this religion, almost every one of those was started for religious purposes. Like, he goes to Kenyon, that was Episcopalian. I don't know what Denison is, but I'm sure it's something. Is Worcester religious at one time? DePaul was there. My sister went there. They're Methodist. So education's had a lot to do. Education and religion have been together since 1829 for Denison. I think it's 1830 for Kenyon or something. I mean, it goes way, way back, et cetera. And John Carroll's in there now. They're Jesuit. So it was fun to see rural, and there's some Amish country up there. So it's kind of neat.
Yeah, speaking of funerals, I went to 2 yesterday, one in my hometown, a fellow about 3 years my senior, and then yesterday afternoon, a former coworker. He was only 78, which is what I'm going to be next month. But Melvin found out that he was a karate instructor. I mean, he was a van driver at the company where I'm still working, and but he also passed from colon cancer. So and then about a month ago, I had 4 funerals in 4 days. I think it's part of my being. I'm pushing 80 now, so everybody's dying. But I text my daughter as she's 48. I said, and that actor, Jim Vanderbeek, colon cancer, age 48. So I told my daughter, be sure and get I think the colonoscopies aren't as terrible as they used to be. You had to drink fluid the day before. Now I think you just poop and send it to them. Isn't that how you get tested?
That's true.
I think it is much simpler. So if you're past 40, get your poop tested. Sorry.
We need more good news.
Betsy, thanks for letting us know about the Word of Hope Temple. And if you don't mind, those of you that can come to the Quimby room, I'd love to get a picture of all of you around it, and I'll text it to Reverend Gary.
A couple of things. Mainly a joy. I'm very happy to be feeling so much better after being very sick for most of this week. So, very thankful to be feeling healthy again. I'm also very thankful that yesterday Patrick was very sweet and surprised me for Valentine's Day with a delightful little gift basket. And finally, if we have nowhere to put those little goodies that were put together for the children, I live near the DCCH, the Diocesan Children's Home, and I would be happy to take those and deliver them to them if we need somewhere for those to go.
Do we have any on Zoom?
Anybody on Zoom?
The rest of us men hate Patrick, so.
Yeah. Way to go.
Okay. If we have nobody on Zoom, then now if we could once again stand as we are willing and able, it's time to sing our closing hymn. Today we're singing number 4, I Brought My Spirit to the Sea.
I brought my spirit to the sea. I stood upon the shore. I gazed upon infinity and heard the waters roar. And then there came a sense of peace. Some whisper calmed my soul. Some ancient ministry of stars had made my spirit whole. I brought my spirit to the trees that loomed against the sky. I touched each wandering careless breeze to know if God was nigh. And then I felt an inner flame that fiercely burned my tears. Upright I rose from bed in need to meet the asking Yes.
In closing, take with you these words from diarist Anais Nin. We travel, some of us forever, to seek other states, other lives, other souls. Our service has ended. In the coming week, may you spread joy, may you spread peace, and may you spread kindness. I hope to see you all for chat, snacks, importantly coffee, and snacks from the Word of Hope Temple that they've left us, and hygiene kits in the Quimby room.
what?
Far fringe.
Far fringe?
Yeah.